here, so if you can't hear me, then move forward. You've got space. Hi, my name's Jervis Johnson. I run Games Workshop's Specialist Games Division, it's called, amongst other things. And I rather foolishly agreed to do a question and answers seminar here at GenCon. Now, I'd like to say it's hugely well prepared, but I don't tend to do hugely well prepared seminars. What I quite like doing is getting you guys to ask questions, and if I can think of anything myself, I like to bounce questions back out to the crowd and talk about things like that. But before I get into that, I thought I'd bring you all up to date on what's happening with specialist games and Fnatic in general. Now, do the people here, I mean, do you all play the specialist games? It's not just Blood Bowl people, is it, that we've got in here? Play the other games too?
More time.
More time. Anybody, other games other than Blood Bowl? Battlefield Gothic? Yeah. Epic, any Warmaster players? Probably.
Battle of 5 Armies.
Battle of 5 Armies, right, yes, the latest game in the range. Now, I don't think I'm going to sugarcoat the pill, as it were. The last year has been tough for the Fnatic Games division, and Games Workshop in general, actually. It's been a difficult year for the business, for a variety of reasons. And what this meant for Fnatic was that a number of people who worked for the department were let go. And we had to look very closely at the way that we supported the Games Workshop Specialist Games range. And what I'm going to do just first of all is just give you a kind of picture about the way the Games Workshop feels about the Specialist Games range, what we feel it does, and how we've reorganised things. And then if you've got any questions about that or anything else to do with the Specialist Games range or Games Workshop range in general, please feel free to ask. I'll be happy to answer anything if I can. Fnatic was set up because we had a number of games in the Games Workshop range, other than our core game systems of Warhammer, 40k, and Lord of the Rings. And we liked those games, but figuring out how to provide support for them proved very, very difficult. The way that we dealt with it initially was by basically bringing the game out and doing a set amount of support for it at the time that we worked on the game, and then taking it off sale a couple of years later. Now, this proved unsuccessful. I think what we failed to anticipate was just how much people buy into those games. For some people, games in the specialist range are their favourite Games Workshop game, or indeed the only Games Workshop game that they play. And this had a knock-on effect, quite apart from the fact that obviously if we didn't support them, they weren't interested in getting anything from Games Workshop at all, was that it upset them that we didn't provide support for these games. And in the end, we found that bringing out new games, it was an uphill struggle to get people to buy into them, because what they assumed was that we were going to take them off sale. So they thought, well, okay, well, that first plan didn't quite work. But on the other hand, trying to do lots and lots of support, like we do for Warhammer and 40k and Lord of the Rings, for all of these games isn't going to work either. There's just too many games there. It would be too much work for the studio to do. So the way we tried to get around that was to create a department called Fnatic. And I moved in as head Fnatic because I've designed Blood Bowl and Epic and worked on most of the games in the specialist range. What we did was set up a little mini studio. Fnatic was like the main studio in Microcosm. We multitasked quite a lot, but I was used to that because the studio when I first joined it back in the day, there weren't very many of us, and we had to do a bit of everything. So it was familiar territory for me. We made models for all of the games in the range. We did magazines. In the end, we decided to combine all the magazines into one so that we could improve the quality of it, bring it out monthly, and just generally make it easier to distribute and sell. We set up a website, and we just provided ongoing support for the games. And effectively, what we did was take the model that Games Workshop had developed for core game systems and applied it to the specialist games range with a much smaller team of people. Now, the idea behind this was that by doing this, we'd start to increase the popularity of the specialist games range, that they'd become more successful as time went along. And what we actually found was that doing that stabilised the situation, that sales of these games had been coming down, and by doing all of the support, what we managed to do was get them to come flatline, more or less. But it took a lot of effort to do that. It took a lot of effort. Proportionally, the easiest way to think about it is that Fnatic cost about 10 to 15% of the studio, and the specialist games range generated around about 3 to 5% of Games Workshop sales. So the numbers really didn't add up, and it didn't look like they were going to go up either. Now, to an extent, that didn't worry us, because we understood that the specialist games range, specialist stuff, it adds luster to the whole Games Workshop offer. There are a number of benefits having these games offer the main range, above and beyond their sales. But nonetheless, last year, when the Lord of the Rings bubble burst, and we were looking around at things, one of the first places that we had to look at really seriously was the mismatch between the cost of the Fnatic studio and the level of sales that were being generated there. And effectively, it forced me to kind of go back to the drawing board and say, okay, we've got these games, we still want to support them. We've tried 2 different ways of supporting them now. We've done the let's not support them at all, and we've done the let's set up a mini studio and try and support them like that. So we needed to come up with a third system. And the third system that we're trying at the moment is a much smaller team, web-based and direct sales support for the specialist games range, and an ongoing commitment to produce material and provide support for the gaming communities that play those games, but much less support in terms of doing magazines. Well, we won't be doing a magazine except online, and new miniatures. We're going to cut back on the amount of new miniatures because that's where a lot of our money and effort went. Not just in terms of making the miniatures, but also in terms of providing the support for them. The games development work that was needed cost quite a lot of money. And New Style Fnatic, the online version of Fnatic, is what we launched at the end of last year, and we're starting to work through now. We've redeveloped the website. We've done quite a lot of work on the website. There's still quite a lot of work that needs to be done in terms of improving the quality and support there. And we've still got quite a lot of miniatures to bring out. We've made loads of miniatures. We were actually, for a small department, very efficient. And so I've got 2 years' worth of stuff to bring out, which we're going to bring out. But we've started to look at how we make new miniatures and the way that we'll go about that. The plan in the future is that effectively I'll pick 1 game system each year, 1 or maybe 2, depending on the size of the release, and we'll do a weighty, solid release for that game. Real kind of like big release for that game system. And the benefits of this is that basically it allows us to focus on that game system for a period of time through the main business. So most of the time the specialist games range will be kind of in the background there. What we're going to do is incorporate them much more into the main website, so that if you go to the main website, there'll be better links through to the specialist games section. And what we'll be doing is saying that if you're looking for a new challenge, if you're starting to get a little tiny bit jaded with Warhammer 40k and Lord of the Rings, there are other things that you can try too, and they live here. And here's all the information. You can download the rules from right here on the website. You can buy the stuff online, so it becomes very much an online offer that's supportive of that core offer through the main website. By picking one of those game systems each year, we can bring it to the fore, and we can do some good, solid material for it to go in White Dwarf magazine. We can have a bit of a war about it. We can splash, it's called splash releasing. We can put stuff out for a period of time in our stores and through trade and stuff like that. And just generally kind of like focus attention on one of these games and say, if you like this game, there are people playing it, we've got forums, there's a community out there. I think the other thing that we'll be looking into, and I think this is where Blood Bowl has a slight edge at the moment, is player-led organisations and trying to get the community to do more support in terms of running the tournaments themselves, because I think that it's going to be very difficult for Games Workshop to do that kind of thing. The level of sales generated by the specialist games range is relatively small, and it means for a small sales business like GW Canada or something like that, the amount of resource they can legitimately apply to it is relatively small. It tends to get forgotten very easily. And my feeling is that the community is much better placed to provide that support. Games Workshop sets up a good website, advertises it, makes sure that people are aware of what's going on, and does something like that. I think that's it. I think that brings you pretty much up to date on the situation at the moment. I guess the other thing to say is to reassure people that there is an ongoing commitment to Games Workshop towards the games in the specialist games range. I know that sometimes people can get very frustrated with the level of support for what is their favourite game in the Games Workshop range and want to see more stuff coming out for it. All I can really say is that from the most senior levels of Games Workshop and right through the company, there's a similar feeling of frustration in the level of support that we can give the specialist games range. But as a business, we still have to be able to make sure that we square that circle, it makes sense, and that we can kind of like stand up in front of our investors, all the rest of it, kind of say, yeah, this makes business sense. And sometimes that's through cutting the cloth to fit and making sure that we're not spending too much money on something. Sometimes it's simply by being able to understand the importance of the specialist games range and what it does for the hobby as a whole. And I think there are areas there where we need to get better at making sure that our staff and investors understands what it is the specialist games range really represents to hobbyists. You know, why it's important to hobbyists. We kind of know it is. Trying to explain it, it's gut. You know, you get a gut feeling. You think, well, I don't know. Wartime, it's just a great game. We don't want to see it go. That would be a dreadful thing to happen. But then trying to say, so going to people and say, well, we're just doing this because we think it's a great game. It doesn't cut a lot of ice.
Accountants have no sense of humor.
Well, so yeah, sometimes you can convince people if you just get that gleam in your eye. Stuff like that, going to spend something. It seems enthusiastic, but it doesn't cut the ice for long, particularly not in a period, say, like we're going through now, where we're kind of like looking at things and saying, yeah, time to tighten the belt a little bit and ride out the situation we're in. Okay, I'm going to throw things open now. If you'd like to ask questions, please dive in about anything. Yeah, I know that there are lots of questions you can ask. Cool. Go ahead.
Who you?
Good.
All right, I'll throw out the first one. With Lord of the Rings bubble bursting, and if I understood it right, you guys have the license agreement to 2009 or 10.
Effectively, I think we're in a position where we can keep it as long as we want. We've got it until at least 2010.
I think it's 10.
Yeah.
But is with the sales of it dying down, is there any intention to switch it to be like a specialist game and then have maybe one of the more popular specialist games take its place in the limelight?
The short answer is no. The slightly long-winded answer is that the situation that we find ourselves in with Lord of the Rings is very similar to some of the situations we found ourselves with the specialist games range. As a business, our core competencies are with Warhammer and 40k. All of our staff understand it's easy. We do an army book. We sell a lot of toy soldiers. We do another army book. We sell them some more toy soldiers, and that's very straightforward. We do that rather well. Lord of the Rings doesn't quite fit that model, and that's why we're struggling a little bit at the moment. But what we want to do is make sure that we get Lord of the Rings right. So there's a commitment to keep it as a core game system rather than promote, for example, Blood Bowl into that slot.
Aside from just recouping the money it took to option the license, are you guys obligated at all to carry Lord of the Rings for any particular amount of time, or is it just totally up to you guys whether you want to do it?
Well, as I understand it, it's completely up to us. I think we've paid all of the money back that we said we would, but I'm not really an expert on that side of things. I think the thing about Lord of the Rings is it's been hugely successful for us, and now it is still hugely successful for us. Lord of the Rings is still sort of 20% plus of Games Workshop's turnover. The thing that we're struggling with is that to do this without not overboard or something to draw on, basically. Games Workshop's growth generally goes like that. It's a straight line. And if you look, if that's 1995 and that's 2005, and you're drawing those drops up, you kind of like it goes in a straight line like that. And this year's thing is right here. But what happened was that when we did Lord of the Rings, we got a bubble. It went like that and went up above our expectation and then came back down again. And what's happened is as it come back down, it caught us out. We didn't expect it to decline. We kind of all of this. Surely the line will now go like that. I think it's classic. It's exactly what happened to TSR. It's exactly what happened to Wizards. You know, bubbles they're great because that is a lot of money in that bubble. There is a lot of money there, and we're very thankful for it. But as a business in the long term, there's a bit where you kind of end up thinking, actually, we must be better off without it, because in the long term, but in the next 10, 15 years, it's that straight line that's important, and keeping our eye on the ball and just doing that stuff keeps that line growing. So what we're doing is we're recouping and we're kind of like retrenching and refocusing ourselves on doing what we did before Lord of the Rings came along and incorporating Lord of the Rings into that strategy.
Would it be, to say that Blood Bowl was the bigger part of the sales for Fnatic, would that be a correct assumption, or?
No, it would be incorrect, actually. It's Blood Bowl is very popular.
What's the biggest seller for?
Biggest seller, the last time we looked, was Inquisitor. Surprisingly. No, I was surprised myself. There doesn't seem to be a direct correlation between the popularity of the game online and within the community. Blood Bowl has by far the most vibrant community, and lots of games going on, lots of tournaments, it's played a lot. But that doesn't necessarily equate directly into sales of miniatures, because that's the way that we generate turnover, interestingly. Blood Bowl's definitely up there, and it has a lot of potential. I think that we know that with Blood Bowl, if we wanted to, we could make it into a core game system. There is no doubt about it. We could treat it like Warhammer and 40k, and we could do a lot of stuff like that. The reason that we don't do that is always, why don't you do it? It's kind of like, the reason that we don't do that is that it's slightly complicated, but for Games Workshop, really our business is getting people to collect armies of Citadel miniatures. That's what our business is about, and the game systems support that. Now, with Blood Bowl, you do collect armies. We call them teams. But effectively, all of the things that drive people to collect an army apply to a Blood Bowl team. It's yours. Nobody else has a team like your team. It's individual. You can buy new bits for it. There's a real collecting hobby going in there, and I know that there are people in this room who have to own every single Blood Bowl miniature that was ever made, ever. Things like that. That's just the way it goes. There's a strong drive there, but nonetheless, the range is much smaller than it is for Warhammer 40k. Conversely, Blood Bowl is very accessible, and it's very easy to get people into because of those things. It's a very easy game to teach. And it can, and it has in the past, distracted us, something like Lord of the Rings did, from that core duty of teaching people the skills of collecting an army, that bigger kind of thing. And so the danger for us with Blood Bowl is if we get it wrong and make Blood Bowl a core game, that it could damage Warhammer and 40k, which would be disastrous for business. We can't afford to allow that to happen. So we have to be very cautious about it. But we are discussing that kind of thing.
So, in essence, the fact that the Blood Bowl teams are like 16 men is actually almost a minus against it because of the amount of money you can spend and be done and happy unless you choose to play 15 different teams of the 21.
I think that the depth of the collecting hobby it just doesn't have the depth that the collecting hobby has for Warhammer 40k. And I think that also there's a philosophical point attached to it. I mean, most of the people who work for Games Workshop, they got into the hobby, they play tabletop war games. They love that kind of thing. Blood Bowl, what it does is it takes the collecting hobby, the idea of the army that you collect, but it applies it to a board game. So it is slightly different as well. And it does, that means it offers us a number of opportunities in other ways. We could set up a division that sold Blood Bowl as a board game, for example. We could keep it within the main thing. There are a number of options, and we are examining them. Really at the moment.
As I say, that was my other question. Hopefully it would not go the sales way of Speedball, but whether it could actually ever be mass marketed in like the box set could actually ever experiment and try and sell it in like Walmart, and even if you did it for 3 months just to see what happened, I would be curious what it would happen.
I think that there's definitely a business plan that can be put together that suggests that. Absolutely. Okay. I think that at the moment,
because didn't you guys do that with Fantasy Battles with what was the board?
Hero Quest.
No, there was a
Space Crusade and Battlemaster.
Big box. Battle Masters. That's what I'm trying to think of.
We did. It was very successful for us.
Okay.
But Battle Masters and Space Crusade and Hero Quest were distributed and sold by
Hasbro. Oh wait, no, Milton Bradley.
Yeah, they got it. Actually, it was different in the UK. It was harder in the So anyway, it was weird, but it was they were a separate business and they had real skills in that area. Distributed. Okay, I'll get back to you.
Grumblings in the ranks from all the groups I've been in is that the Imperium in 40K has just been completely stagnant in technology, and we all want to find out if humans actually went out beyond the Imperium and are going on, live their happy lives without the Emperor. Is there any look at the future for that, like in 40K? Will there actually be another army of humans out there that aren't idiots?
I think that there is actually. It's just we've changed them into a slightly alien version of humans called the Tau. That archetype of the rather cheerier view of what the future might hold for the human race is embodied in the Tau, rather than because I don't think that what you're. This is more a 40K than a specialist games question, obviously. The 40K background is relatively static, and we don't plan to push it forward very much. We'll get little bits and pieces where we might kind of look, there's a campaign going on here, or we'll do a global campaign like we did with Eye of Terror. But really, you're not going to get much more than that's a fairly static background. We might pick out new alien races to do that allow us to explore a new archetypal element, because that's effectively each race we do for Warhammer allows us to explore an archetype of some kind or another. But we don't really have any plans to say who wins. Do we beat chaos or anything like that and live happily ever after? I don't think that'll ever happen. We'll leave things the way they are.
You've mentioned that you have about 2 years of releases ready. What kind of things do we expect to see over that?
I have to get my list because I just forget many times and stuff like that. Okay. Right. Okay. Well, effectively, we've got stuff for all of the specialist game systems, apart from Battle of Five Armies, which is pretty much a self-contained game. For Blood Bowl, we've got the cheerleaders, Zug and assistant coaches, things like that coming out in October, I believe is the plan. We've got Feral Orcs for Epic. More time, we've got which is a frenzied mob. We've done a frenzied mob already. Might be a new frenzied mob. And some Beastman Vestigal. We've got various bits and pieces. There are things I'm not allowed to talk about because they're too far in the future. I get told off if I say what's happening more than 6 months into the future. It's the law. You're not allowed to talk about stuff more than 6 months out. So over the next 6 months, we've got stuff for Blood Bowl, we've got stuff for Epic, and we've got stuff for Necromunda and more time.
What was the Blood Bowl stuff?
And Inquisitor.
You said new human cheerleaders, or
new human cheerleaders, assistant coaches, and the mighty Zug. So we kind of add on the extra bits that you need to go with the human team. Okay. There is a dwarf team in the works.
That's what I thought.
One of that kind of like system.
With the new business model where you're doing one game a year, so does that mean there's going to be like 5 years between stuff for each game?
One or two, yes, to an extent. I think that there are other things that we're looking at. Blood Bowl tends to fall into that category. What we might do is that we can look at some of the games in the specialist range and say, actually, these would be better suited in a different bit of the business, more or less. If you look at Games Workshop now, we used to just be a toy soldier company. Actually, we used to be just a board games company back in the day, but we used to be just a toy soldier company. But now Games Workshop Group encompasses things like Forge Gold, Black Library, Sabertooth. So what we do is we set up some different divisions, and each of those is a separate business. They don't answer to any of the others. Right. And so we can look at stuff like that, and it might be that we say with some of the games in the specialist range, what we might be better off doing is rather than keeping them in here, where they have a role in supporting the core ranges and being part of our tabletop war games offer, that we're better off putting them over here and setting up a whole business built around them, a small one, like Forge World is small. But somebody was telling me the other day that Forge World on its own has a turnover equal to Rackham's. Yeah, they can be relatively big businesses once you set them up.
A question before, I was thinking, you said that if Blood Bowl made a core game and it was done wrong, it hurt 40K Fantasy. I was curious if you thought that Lord of the Rings was done wrong, and if so, how it hurt 40K Fantasy if it did.
There's an interesting question, a really good one actually. It's a really good one. I think that that's a really interesting question. I'm sorry, I'm thinking, which is why I'm not just answering. I I think that, to be fair, I don't know. Is the answer. I don't know whether it hurt those game systems. I don't think it did. I think that with Lord of the Rings, what it did was we got an easy ride. We got an easy ride for 3 years, and that would be dangerous for a business because we forgot basic stuff. It's not particularly to do with Warhammer and 40k, because it's affecting Lord of the Rings now too, if you see what I mean, and the specialist games range for that matter. So you can look at the success and say that you have to be careful sometimes. People just come in and say, I want the Lord of the Rings game, you don't have to roll for it. It can be dangerous unless you're very, very disciplined. I think we were pretty good. We knew we were riding a bubble. We knew that kind of thing. We just didn't anticipate it quite right. And now we're like riding out the other side of it. I have to say though that from my point of view, and from the view of the people in the company, it feels like we're out the other side of it. It might not seem like that out in the world, but from our point of view, it's kind of like the future looks pretty good. Actually, we can skip it's there's good stuff coming through, and the lessons that we've learned have been really valuable.
Right. It seems not to jump on the next question, but it seems to me that you may still be in a bailout phase because you just rolled out 40k4, you put out the Space Marines to start with, you went to the Tyranids, but now you're going back to Space Marines with Black Templars. Now, I mean, everybody knows Space Marines sell. So right in time for Christmas, it seems like a bailout effort to not go to a new race.
Actually, it's not. Actually, I can say that because it was planned so long ago. Studio planning it stretches 3 years out at least. It takes a long time to get things in place. So we already knew that the Black Templars were coming before we hit any trouble with Lord of the Rings. The reasons for doing the Space Marines is, as you say, they sell. They sell on a level that people just. Yeah, I mean, they are over 50% of 40k sales of Space Marines. So it really means that every other thing we do should be Space Marines. We don't go quite that mad, but at the beginning of the process, it certainly helps to do those things. I think also the IP is really strong. And the games development team were hot to do some stuff with Black Templars. They wanted a new chapter to do some stuff with, rather than just redoing the Blood Angels or the Dark Angels, which would have been the obvious choices the first time around. But no, it's not that we can't react that quickly. The studio and the product that the studio makes, you'll start seeing the impact of the changes and things that have been going on in a couple of years' time. Not now. All of the stuff that we're doing now was planned ages ago.
You mentioned before that the cost before the change were like 15% of cost to 3% revenue for Fnatic. What are they at about now?
I think they're round about equal. If you see what I mean, yeah. So what we've got down is the cost. I can't work out the sums actually because I'm a bit jet lagged. It's around about the same. We are safe now as long as. I mean, yes.
More of a break.
The numbers all add up.
Well, I guess the question was: is it more break even or is it actually black?
It's either break even or black, depending on the level of sales or the specialist company.
You mentioned that Lord of the Rings had the kind of bubble effect. Was that totally new people coming into the hobby, and then as soon as Lord of the Rings the film stopped coming out, they got out of it, or was it Warhammer players? Oh, hey, let's buy Lord of the Rings stuff too.
I think it has to be a combination of both. I mean, the perceived ism, anecdotally, is it brought a lot of new people in. They didn't necessarily stay all that long, but it brought a lot of new people in. But I am wary of anecdotal information. Traditionally, Games Workshop's rather good at collecting hard data to back up kind of facts like that. So you have to take that with a bit of caution. I've been going out and kind of like meeting people. I actually part of the since I got an extra hat when Fnatic was downsized a bit. I get to look at strategy work and stuff, Games Workshop, investigate things like what are we going to do with Lord of the Rings. And so I've been out talking to people and going out just trying to get a handle on what the hobby's like. And the people that I meet out there just seem like Games Workshop hobbyists to me. There's a range of different ages and stuff like that. People who do other things, people who only play Lord of the Rings. They seem like the people in this room, to be honest. There's nothing particularly special or extraordinary about them. don't think that's in the Hustley way, so I didn't realise. Or they're all equally special.
To tag on to his question, I sat in a meeting once with some higher-ups in trade from the Northeast, and they told me that Games Workshop doesn't conduct any kind of metrics or ROI studies on intro games versus new players at all.
We didn't used to.
When did they start?
It's starting at the moment. Part of the reorganisation of the studio, which Fanatic was a part, started to bring in people from outside the business who are good with numbers and things like that. It's workshops. It's important to understand workshops still quite a small company in many ways, that we've grown up using by following our instincts. But as you get bigger and bigger, you just have to. There are things you can learn from experts in other fields, and we started to bring in experts from those fields. I think that getting real hard data about introductory gaming is something that we'll get to. But the first stage, what we're really doing is just getting proper, good, serious kind of information about what sells, how much it costs to make, the balance of that kind of thing within our product range, to really kind of examining these things seriously. It's fascinating. I have to say, from my point of view, it's very, very interesting.
Are these studies only being conducted through your retail stores? They're being conducted through independents as well?
I think that there's something that will be going to happen. We've got the plans to do it. So I think that intro gaming, will be. Generally it's run in our stores. If there are good independents that will do that kind of thing, but I would imagine the information will be very much the same anyway. It's the same kind of thing.
Is there, now that the Lord of the Rings thing is done, are there any plans?
It's not done.
Okay.
We're going to keep it going.
The big cycle of Lord of the Rings boxed games is, I assume, done.
I've got some of the bits here actually. I'm allowed to have these randomly out of the next one. That's the Plastic Fellowship. That's the Plastic Troll.
Plastic Fellowship.
We're going to keep on doing stuff with the Rings. The first step is the Mines of Moria, which is an introduction to the game system, a new rule book, the one rule book to rule them all, which has all of the rules in, and a really good supplement, I have to say, called Fellowship of the Ring, which is a fantastic hobby guide, just generally. And it's really good. It just runs you through this. The idea of it is, here are all of the scenarios based on the first movie, but it's got great stuff on painting, modelling, and terrain making. It's just a really, really good hobby guide. And the plan is to do a little series of those and do more what we call gazetteers, which, so we've got a couple of gazetteers sorted out for next year, one which brings in the I don't know their names, the Eastern guys, but some cats who you see marching along in one of the movies. And another one about the wood and the forts or on there. So we've got those planned products, new metal and plastic models, ongoing supplements and so on. We're just investigating details.
Travel Blood Bowl.
Travel Blood Bowl. I would love to do it. I think that
little magnetic.
I think with the specialist games range, make no bones about it. What we're doing is we're in a holding pattern. We're supporting the stuff that's already there, and we'll be able to do other things.
Can you just make magnetic bases? Because the war, if you made a magnetic board and magnetic bases, the Warmaster, you've got almost all the races there that are easily converted. So we just need a little board.
I think out of the games in specialist range, Blood Bowl is safe because it's got a lot of potential. If I was running a little business, under the business plan for Blood Bowl, I would include Travel Blood Bowl in it. So obvious.
Well, I remember when I was in England 2 years ago, you had the designs and the new detail, the big gun, and everything.
We worked out how to make it. It was relatively straightforward. There's ideas are easy. The difficulty is making it reality.
Yeah.
The devil's in the detail and so on, basically. How do you actually get that made? How do you deal with the other teams that people would immediately start asking for? And all the rest of it. Nonetheless, I think Travel Blood Bowl would be a great thing.
I guess the other question I had, I went to all the different country sites because somebody was asking me, they were looking for like block dice, and went to every single Games Workshop's country's website, and not a single one of them sell block dice. The other thing I found while doing this was the fact that the actual support, and I didn't look at the other end of it just for Blood Bowl, was very good on the UK site. But as I would leave the UK, it got worse quickly. In fact, I was noticing, like on the US site, that there's a lot of what you would normally consider core figures that they aren't even selling now. So I guess my question is there, and I realize that the different countries are their own business companies, but is there any way to kind of say you need to offer at least this stuff, or?
The plan is to sell stuff directly from the Fnatic website. What we'll do is we're going to to add a store onto the Fnatic website that sells everything in the range.
And would that mean that I'm just trying, would be shipping from the UK for someone in the US, or would there be a US division?
It would be the order would be sent to the different divisions. This is going into a horrendous amount of detail. Basically, in the UK and Europe, there is a manufacturing division called Eurodirect, and what they do is they can send stuff to anywhere in Europe, and they cover the entire Games Workshop range. Everything's available. That means that technically you can place an order anywhere in Europe for anything, and if it's not carried locally, they take the order anyway, and you might wait a week or two for it to turn up. It might take a little bit longer, but you will get it. And the price you will pay will be as if you ordered it locally.
Oh, that's good.
We are going to be able to set up the same thing to cover North America and Canada too. Now, the difficulty, that's one of those things where the devil's in the detail, is getting that message so that we say the same thing everywhere, and people don't revert back to the old message. And one of the real problems that we've had with the specialist games range is that there's a tendency, because we've evolved and changed over time, that as we change things and try to make it easier for people to get hold of stuff and modify the way that things are supplied, that message doesn't work its way down to all of the people in the sales business. So what they'll do is they'll use a message, an older message. It's not their fault. It's because we've changed a bit too quickly, and we haven't put enough effort into making sure that everybody knows what's going on and taking our time about it. But that's where we will be at. You will be able to get anything in the Games Workshop range through direct sales online, and it would the cost would be as if you ordered it locally. That is our plan.
And I guess the subcategory of that is block dice only going to be available through NAF if you sign up for a membership or the board box game?
At the present time, I believe so, yes.
Okay.
But we'll work on that.
They're gone. If you actually order them from the U.S., they'll tell you that they no longer supply them. They're on permanent back order.
Components for Blood Bowl was something that we were going to get sorted out. It's more difficult for us to sort it out now, as the circumstances. It should be something we can get. And I'm aware of it to be a problem, it seems, because the boards, range rulers, block dice, all of the bits and components are things that wear out and get lost, and it would be good to allow people to be able to order those sets of that. Go on, but I'll get to you. No, you go.
Ladies first.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, if the Fnatic games are largely, you want to move the focus to the communities out there and away from you guys to supporting them as an actual organized play structure or anything like that. By making the pieces only available directly online, you're sort of circumventing the game stores where these people's communities typically dwell. So by doing that, you feel like you're cutting off your own legs.
I think that to an extent that's true. The problem is that we can't carry the entire range through trade. What's happened instead in the US is that we can set up systems where stores, elite accounts tend to be what we're looking at, can order any of the stuff in the direct sales range through mail order in the stores. They get a lower level of discount because the margin's not there for us apart from anything else. And it's sent direct to the store, and then the customer can collect it there. Or if they really want to, what they can do is they can use that as a method of ordering in stock and carry it in their store.
I think there's been a challenge in the past in defining what an elite account is.
I think that if a trade account, particularly in North America, if they get in touch with US mail order, they're allowed to order from the US mail order range.
Only if they order directly through U.S. trade sales. That's not a problem. You don't deal with anybody who goes through distributors. That's a fact.
Yeah, we don't deal with distributors, but yes.
But the point is that if the store is so small where it only orders directly from distributors and doesn't order through GW Trade, it actually is forbidden to order through mail order unless it has a minimum trade order at least once a month or something like that.
Yeah. The reason for that is that a big issue for Workshop is small trade accounts filling themselves up with stock that won't move through. Now, this is a real problem for trade. What happens is that often trade reps will go into the store and they'll find that there can be quite a lot of stock there that's been there for quite a long time, and other stock which has moved through very quickly. Now, it takes a certain level of experience, really, for a retailer to really be able to judge what is the stock that will move through at a good rate, and stuff that he's ordering to customers and so on. And that's what we try to do is kind of like tier the accounts. Now, you can't just sort of like, there isn't a magic formula that, as you say, that's an elite account and that's not. One of the easiest ways of doing it is looking at the volume of business that they do with Games Workshop, because generally an elite account will sell enough stuff to be able to order every month. It's a simple kind of measure, and that's all we're trying to do, is trying to make sure that that small trade accounts don't end up ordering in stuff at low margin, which then sits on their shelves. And there's a commercial reason for doing that, because they'll never order from us ever again if the stock just sits there. And that's the reason that happens.
I don't want to monopolize too much of everybody's time. There's been problems with trade accounts ordering through GW direct trade sales have experienced issues where we've been told that there's a percentage of our reorder amount, whatever dollars it is directly reallocated to the Games Workshop stores in our metro area. That we were told that by our metro manager. So therefore, then the more we order through Games Workshop, the more money we're directly giving him to run his store that is competing with us effectively. So therefore, as an option, there's a number of us.
It's not something that I can comment on. It sounds arcane apart from anything else.
There's a difficulty you may face with doing this, because as a result of that becoming the statement we've been given, a number of us, and not small retailers, some of us do quite a bit of business, have moved to the other distributors to support Games Workshop product in addition to Wizards Coast and everything else. So now, as a result of us moving our ordering away from Games Workshop Trade, we're forbidden to carry more products from Fnatic because we can't go through mail.
The important thing to understand is that they're not my products; they're part of the Games Workshop range. There is no difference. Fnatic is just it's a bit of the studio, and the range is part of the Games Workshop range. So there's no real separation there between those things. It's all Games Workshop product lines. I understand what you're saying. I think that the thing that you need to understand is that from Games Workshop's point of view, we have to come up with a relatively simple solution to what's quite a complicated situation. And the aim is not to kind of like get people to play 40k and not to play More Time or Blood Bowl or something like that. It just makes no sense for us to do those things. It's to make sure that we sell as much stuff as possible and people are as successful as they can be. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't make mistakes, and I think that absolutely there are situations where, in particular, trying to communicate the reason why we're doing things and make sure that people understand that they might not agree with us, but we're not doing it for any particularly kind of like arcane sort of like weird sort of evil reason, but just because we're trying to help people out and make sure that they can be as successful as possible in the broadest sense. It's probably just we try to make that message clear. That's partly because it's just complicated. Trying to explain it all is complicated and difficult to sort out. And it's partly because sometimes people who are passing the message on directly might not have had the message passed on to them coherently and sensibly by somebody like me. I'll have done one of these kind of things. I'll have waved my arms around a lot and then got away. And what the bloody hell was he talking about? Well, I think what he meant was this. And then I'll try to do that as best they can. But what I can do is I can feed that kind of stuff back in. And I think that in many ways, doing what you're doing, kind of like saying, oh, okay, we're going to work over here, and then letting trade direct, so the reps and people from the US business know what you're doing. Sending them emails, writing them letters, and just kind of saying, I've decided to do this. It may not seem to have any effect immediately. That's because Games Workshop is a great big thing. And if we made a decision, if I went away from this, got on the phone to Tom Kirkman and said, Tom, what we should do is this, it wouldn't have any impact even on something like direct sales for a year or two. It's a great big ocean liner,
Right.
kind of like ploughing along in this kind of like direction. It's hard.
If you're free afterwards, I don't want to take up everyone's time, so touch base.
As long as he gets my house for dinner on time, I don't care.
The website mentions like variations of Blood Bowl, like Dungeon Bowl. There's like a basketball one, a beach volleyball. Do you guys plan on developing any of those any further?
That's my site, JJ.
We link to it from our side, don't we? Well, we don't have any plans to at the present time. However, what we are more than happy to do is publish stuff in the magazine telling people how to play games like that. And if people have got cool stuff and cool websites, we'll link to them. We're trying to make it easier to see, for people to see how they can contribute. And if they've got a good idea, then what we can do is we can say, look, we can get your idea to a wider public. You're going to have to work it up yourself.
Along those lines, especially with things like the Beach Bowl that have proved to be very popular in Street Bowl, they actually now have as tournaments. Is there any chance? I realize Blood Bowl magazine came and went, and Fanatic magazine came and went, and I seem to be the death of both of them, as my articles were published in the last issue of each. It was my fault. Sorry.
It's nothing to do with me, though.
I know that Blood Bowl Compendium #1 was one of the hottest selling mags that the library has ever released. Would there be a chance that if those best articles were collected, and not just the scraps that got thrown into Compendiums 2 and 3, but back to like the Blood Bowl Compendium #1, where it was good, solid, original stuff, that could actually see print? Is that even
at the present time? No.
No.
I think that we're not going to be in a position to do that. I think that basically the Fnatic team has its hands full doing what it's doing, and we want to concentrate on getting those things right. So there are irons in the fire, and nobody really more than me wants to have a chance to actually just go out there and just go for it, be as successful as it can be. So there are things that are being talked about, which might in the future mean that stuff like that. It's very easy to do, but right at the moment.
The only reason I was curious was because I knew the sales on those had been extremely high, and that's since the focus right now is how much money will we make, and that's a very critical detail. That was why I wondered, because I know that Compendium 1 and Blood Bowl Magazine #1 both had really high sales points compared to their print runs.
They did very well within their own lines. I think it's important to understand that the way that Fnatic set up and working within the main business means that the difference between the level of sales on 40k and Warhammer product, Lord of the Rings product, and Fnatic product is just enormous. Until you actually see the numbers there, it is difficult to realise just how many plastic Space Marines get sold every minute, or whatever it is. It's personally, I actually don't believe it myself. I've been working for Games Workshop for more than 20 years now. I started out, there were 50 of us, working in a shed, basically, a very crowded shed. But there are times now when I think we can't be this great big business that's selling, just millions of Space Marines, millions and millions of Space Marines are out there in the world. I think what really is going on is that nobody's telling me that we're a front for some kind of drugs card. That's how we really make it. And all of the rest of it is just pretend. We sell a few plastic Space Marines here and there, but all the rest of it. But when you look at the numbers, for me, and I've been there all this time, and I go along to the shows and things like that, I still can't believe the amount of core product that we sell is absolutely enormous. And it means that the reason for supporting the specialist games range is not on quantity of sales. It's not on that kind of like, let's make to be honest, if we sold £1 million worth, that would be great. But it's still compared to the overall sales of Games Workshop is relatively small. Now, the reason that we do it is different. We do it because they're great games. We do it for a variety of reasons, but that just to add extra turnover to the business isn't really one of them.
Okay.
Will you be releasing all of the figures that have already been sculpted? I've seen, I think there was a French sculptor, Sylvain Courion.
Yes, Sylvain.
He did Bretonian Questing Knight for Mordheim.
I think we've got that, yes. That's in the release schedule. Basically, we'll be releasing all the good ones that we have. Effectively what's happening is the new models are running through the studio's quality control system, which is somewhat slightly stricter
head coach.
than my old quality control system was.
Cool
And some models, they said, these either have to be sculpted or remade over cast efficiently, or they're just a bit really. So they won't bring them out. But the Question Knight, as I understand, it's one of them that's made the cut and will be released at some point.
Thank you.
You said there's assistant coaches coming out for their new human team. Are you kind of following the lines of like what Shadowforge does in Australia, where they have lots of support players for the different teams?
Not particularly as such. I think they should be following. Oh yeah, I mean with the human team, the new style human. What we wanted to do was get a human team that gave you a lot of models within that set and had the extra bits to go along with it. Basically, so you've got a cheerleader and you've got your assistant coaches and the star players, and it was all complete. And we redid it. And then the idea originally was that we'd pick one Blood Bowl team a year and kind of work our way through. Obviously, there's going to be a bigger gap between doing those things, at least until we figure out a different way of dealing with Blood Bowl. But that principle would apply. So the dwarf team, we want to do a dwarf team the same style as the human team, and cheerleaders and coaches and stuff to go along with it. So you get everything you need to play the game.
Okay. Along those lines, and while I realize this is maybe hazardous material for what I consider for my collecting, I mean, with Shadowforge and Heresy, and I mean, there's probably a good 4 or 5 companies out there now making fantasy football figures, which always has made us wonder about the ability for Games Workshop to make more money from it, since so many people seem to be adding to the figures allowed. So I guess I had 2 questions: is how do you see what do all those companies making fantasy football figures say to you about what you guys could be doing? Or
I think that again, it's a question of degree. There's a business there, clearly. I'm Shadow. Well, they don't just make us. I won't say ripped off Blood Bowl figures, but they don't just make fantasy football miniatures. They do other stuff too, and they survive as a business, perfectly cheerfully. So there's a business to be had there for other companies. I think that with Workshop it's different. This is the thing, is that kind of like if you look at the resources, if you look at, you say, I've got a miniature designer here, or indeed I've got Jervis Johnson here. You can either be doing this business and we get this level of return, or you could be working over here, in which case we get this level of return. Okay. It's that kind of question that ties what kind of bedevils are planning the specialist games range, really, because it will always apply. What we don't want to do, though, is end up with a situation where we just say, well, let's just make more Space Marines. That's all we should do, is make more Space Marines, because they sell a lot. Because we know that the hobby will fall over and die at the stage where we do that. But getting the balance right, knowing where the line lies, should we be doing Blood Bowl or not, is difficult.
So if I can put you on the spot, because this is one of those questions I've always wanted to hear your opinion on. Those help Blood Bowl? Those are good to have all these companies trying to make? You can call them rip-off Blood Bowl figures, fantasy football figures, whatever you want, but it's not just that. I mean, not only that, but I don't know if the cost of casting them down, but it seems like every tournament now coming out, everyone's running out and making their own new figure to bring out for their own tournaments. So
I think that there are 2 things. I mean, basically, people effectively making money off of the work and effort that we put in trying to support Blood Bowl can be a bit galling sometimes, because just making the toy soldiers is the easy bit. Okay. So it's important to understand that what Games Workshop does is it puts a huge amount of money and resources into supporting the miniatures that it makes. magazine, we bring out games, we do army books, we run websites, we run tournaments, we do all of this other stuff that's involved there. It costs quite a lot of money. And it's what that work does is it makes the miniatures successful. And so somebody who's come along and kind of said, well, I just do the miniatures bit based on the stuff that you've done, can sometimes be a bit frustrating and annoying for us as a business. And so we don't see, and we don't see it as being a healthy thing. If they came along and asked for a license, something like that, we could say yes or no. Yeah. So in a purely business kind of sense, it's clearly not something that we encourage or that we like, and on a purely personal level, it can be a bit frustrating to see people doing these things. I think that does it help the Blood Bowl hobby? I've got a feeling it probably does in some kind of ways, and that it's cool for stuff to be going on, keep people playing, giving them new challenges. There's extra bits and pieces to collect, might keep them playing on. So Blood Bowl as a hobby separate from the Games Workshop business. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Now I think that what's interesting about that is it kind of bounces the question back to us: should we be licensing these things out? And things. There's a business there. Yeah, using our IP, stuff that's copyright and trademarked to Games Workshop. So there's opportunities for us to do other things. With that IP.
You would just say it's kind of like I understand what you're saying about Shadowforge or Heresy or other companies are making teams and sign up. What about the tournaments that are doing their own figs? Do you sort of see that the same way?
No, I don't. I completely because they don't make it. The
tournament
organisers, they're not. Well, as far as I know, it's not a business. Somehow I think it's a labour of love, and on that level, people doing stuff like that, as long as they're not selling the models, then I think it's okay. Now, I can't. What I do have to say right here and now, particularly people writing things down and taking it, is that I am not an expert on trademark copyright, and that if you want to find out about that officially from Games Workshop properly, what you need to do is get in touch with our legal department. People tend to be scared of Games Workshop's legal department.
They have big nasty teeth.
They're gamers, just like you and me. And they actually will do anything they can to help people as long as it's legal. They really will. No, they really will. And they'll let me know. And they won't they won't send police it as their first course of action. What they'll do is they'll say, do you mind not doing that? Yeah, it's not really right. Yeah, they're honestly, they will do their best to be helpful, and they are worth emailing and asking questions like that about. They won't go, oh, spotted him. Right, let's go.
But do you think they're I'm wondering, would we ever see like GW Legal coming after a tournament for making a unique figure?
They're going to shut down Fumble before they come after you.
I could not say categorically I personally would consider them rather unlikely. Yeah. Because if they're going to do that,
I'm next, right after them.
And people are actually making and selling miniatures.
I haven't heard of any tournaments making figs and actually coming out in the black yet. most of the tournaments that do figs are pretty way away.
Personally, I don't think it would be a major issue, but that is off the record. And if you want to get it direct from the horse's mouth, you could get in touch with the legal department. Again, strictly off the record. I think the best thing to do is just go ahead and do it and wait for the legal department to get in touch with you if you're doing anything wrong. So they won't shut you down. They won't make you get all you're willing to give the miniature back.
Oh, God!
The worst that could happen is they say, please don't do that again. Because it could damage our copyright. That's why they do it. They say that it could, in some obscure way, devalue copyright.
I think today most tournaments have at least tried somewhat to keep the figures they've been doing away from races that are like, I don't think anybody has done a Skaven or a Lizardman. Have you done a Skaven? Yeah, but you're
two-headed.
Yeah, okay, but that's yours is different.
As I say, I think that if you wait for them to get in touch with you, but I'll go off the record and read that.
Okay, I was wondering about the planned re-release of the box set for Blood Bowl.
Yeah.
You able to talk about that?
Yes, yeah,
okay.
Talk about that.
Is that going to be a complete redesign, or is that going to be like the last thing where we just got sort of a re-release of the box of the third edition with just a new rulebook? Or is it like going to be totally redesigned with the new plastic schemes?
That would that's what I hope would happen. Yeah, so I can't say categorically. Yeah, because it's more than 6 months out. Currently, what I would like to do in 2007 for the 20th anniversary of Blood Bowl is launch a new edition, proper 4th edition, as it were, with a new rule book, new plastics, new artwork. We do it properly. Now, Fnatic as was, big version of Fnatic that could just done that. We had the resources to be able to do it. Fnatic as is, it's a lot more difficult. But I still wanted to do that. That is what I want to do, a new edition.
I kind of cheated and talked to a couple guys in like the marketing group over in the UK, and they're like, well, when I was telling them how we were working on, they says, you know, if JJ can come in and say, look, I've got this rule book and it didn't cost me anything for the editors, they're like, wow, that's like cha-ching already. So they said that was a good sign, at least when you present that.
I think it's it's complicated. We can talk about it later on. I think it's difficult for me to talk about it in a big broad group,
right.
Partly because it's very complicated and involves, you know, like 3 different options and all kinds of various things. I think the easiest thing to say here is that personally, I would really like a new edition of Blood Bowl to come out in 2007, be fully supported, marketed extremely well and extremely aggressively, and allow Blood Bowl to achieve the potential that it has for being a really successful game system. And somehow or another, I'm going to try and make that happen. But I don't always get what I want.
With those tournaments that those guys are talking about, with Development Figures and all the other companies making new stuff, have you guys seen an increase in downloads on a living rulebook or anything like that? Are you guys going to track that?
But yeah, basically the living rulebooks are very popular and are downloaded a lot. It's fairly steady. Obviously, the thing going up new is when it first goes up that you get the maximum kind of like surge of hits. But I think what we've been seeing is a lot more links to the rulebooks in other places. That the word is starting to get out that these things exist. And I think that's rather exciting for us. Okay, I am about to show you. This is the marketing research. This is Black Rules Codex, but it's done through what do they call it when you print stuff? You print a book. No, where you can just order one book to be printed.
Oh.
Print on demand. Print on demand. Print on demand allows you to do stuff like this. And potentially what we could do with the stuff that we've got on our website is start to move into that sort of direction. Now, that whole area of there being kind of like a set of rules for games that are maintained on the website that you can either download or you can order to be printed on demand, and they'll be sent to you like this. I think it's rather exciting because it works very well with low volumes of stuff. And if we can get that sorted out right, then the other thing is starting to get people to get used to the idea of the way that we support the specialist games ranges on the website. I think that Blood Bowl is a slightly separate kind of like thing, but if you look at the bulk of the games that are there, Wartime, Necromunda and things like that, we've got great ranges of miniatures, we've got great games. You can download the rules from our website, you can play these games, and maybe we can get something like print on demand sorted out, and it gives a whole area of fun for people to go off and play in, basically. And that can be quite a successful business. Now, as you say, I think that for trade accounts in particular, there's a problem with that, because there won't be the product that's around like that necessarily for them to carry in store. But I think that what we, and I don't know whether we'll ever be able to quite get those things married up. I think that we'll probably be able to get to a place where elite accounts can carry the product, and like Games Workshop, they'll need to learn that the margin isn't there for them to get their full discount, basically, but they can carry those things as a service to their customer, and because it makes their store an exciting or fun place to go, which is exactly the same reason that Games Workshop keeps these things in the range. The issue of how an independent account deals with specialist product is in microcosm the issue that Games Workshop deals with the specialist games range. You see what I mean?
Right, but do Games Workshop stores carry the specialist games?
In the US they don't. In the UK they use what they have generally is a bay. One bay, and the store is given over to specialist games range catalogues, some box games, and direct sales stuff. And what they do is they use mail order in the stores to support those game systems. So if a customer likes the games, they can play them on Veterans Nights. One of the gaming nights in each week is called a Veterans Night. You have to be 16 to go along. You can play any Games Workshop game that's ever made. And so if you want to set up a Blood Bowl League or play Warmaster or whatever it might be, you're allowed to do so. And to support those people who are interested in those things, they have a section, in particular they have quite good catalogues and ordering facilities which allow them to just order the stuff and it's sent to the store. And the other thing that we looked at was doing smash releases, where we pick one game system and we put some stock into the store to recruit new people in and just let them know that hobby exists, which worked quite well as well. That was done pretty much in the UK. And if we can get that system worked out and kind of make sure that we're supporting the core game system as well at the same time, then it's absolutely a system we can roll out elsewhere. And generally with independent accounts, what we do is we say, well, if it works well for us, why don't you copy what we do and try to offer that facility to them? And there's no reason why we shouldn't.
Technically, you can shut it down anytime you want. Okay. I know you're not a keeper.
I don't know, just a quick question.
Yeah, you've been talking.
I'm happy to keep on going if people have got questions, but I think we probably should start with things now because we found what's the schedule.
Quick question about more about the kind of specialist game stuff. Is Games Workshop going to be releasing any more, like I don't know, a new Man of War or a Warhammer kind of Inquisitor thing in the future, or?
We'd like to, but we've got to figure out how to support specialist games range stuff that we've already got first. It is an important issue for Games Workshop. So as I was saying earlier on, this isn't something where it's kind of like a few of us. Sometimes I read stuff on the internet and it sounds like there's like being abandoned. Yeah, we're hunkered down in a bunker somewhere, kind of like eating off these hordes of accountants and then it's destroy them. Yeah, we will keep on, so somehow or another. And all us, lie down. But actually all we are is we're just the public face of Games Workshop, kind of like, like trying to pass the message out as best we can. The last person that I was speaking to was Tom Kirby, who's CEO of Games Workshop, and the thing that he was talking to me about was how frustrating it is that we can't do new games like we used to. And that we've got to figure out how to be able to do that somehow or another. There are lots of different ways we could go about it, and that's the problem. I think that we could do it the way we've done it in the past, and try to go back to that, or we can try and establish new things, and what we're working on at the moment is figuring those out. But to be honest, I think for the next year or two, what you'll see is Games Workshop concentrating on Warhammer 40k, Lord of the Rings, supporting the specialist games ranges, games that are there, and making sure that if you play them, you can get them, and you go. There's a website and place for you to go. And then, from that stage, we'll start trying out a new plan and see if we can get that one to work. I hope it's third time lucky.
You said you and Andy in a bunker. Which Andy were you referring to?
Andy Hall.
Oh.
He's the meanwhile, me and Andy.
How many of you are there in Connecticut? Not just you and Andy?
There's me and Andy and Keith, plus various freelancers.
Keith is great.
Yeah.
Keith's great.
Yeah,
especially if you ask Keith about Andy. Those are great emails.
Oh. He does have a slight problem with grammar and spelling, but he's very good at just kind of what to do.
Jake Thornton, where did he get up to?
He was working for the NHS, the last I heard, and doing freelance stuff in his spare time. He's, as Jim could tell you, Jake loves his card games and board games. Really, what he'd really like to do is be a freelance guy doing Euro games. I think in the best of all possible worlds, that's what he'd like to be doing. So that's his plan at the moment. Okay. I think we'll let things there. Thank you very much for the question.